We're just waiting on a live feed. All good? Okay, I can continue. Okay, there's no apologies then. Any motions of grant leave of absence? No leave of absence. No non-attendance. Public open forum. Is anybody wishes to speak from the public open forum? No? Any declarations of interest, please? None? Will somebody move confirmation of the minutes held on the 13th of October? The Mayor, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All those in favour? Against? Carried. It was moved by the Mayor and seconded by Deputy Mayor. And it was carried. No, it wasn't unanimously, just carried. Thank you. Business arising from the minutes. 6.1, business arising, yes.
Questions of business arising from the minutes. On page 13, GM crops. Do we have any comeback with the government? Can we write a letter to state our disappointment in their decision? Where can we go with this? There's still a lot of people that are really upset about the fact that they've ignored us and other councils.
Yeah, through the chair, I suppose that is an option to further express and write back to the minister expressing a concern. I know that the 10 other councils are in a similar position and are equally disappointed. So there may be an opportunity to gauge with them what they may want to do, whether there's a collective effort that could be put to the minister. But we definitely could further press if that was the desire of the committee and council.
Do that as a motion, or can that just be requested?
Through the chair, I think it would be appropriate if we have a motion without notice to that effect.
Page 25, road reserves. And we're talking about the cleanliness of road reserves. Is there any way we can have volunteers help with that, like we have the graffiti team? Is there any way we can have some gather volunteers to help with the cleanliness of those roads?
Mr. Delaney.
Yes, certainly we don't have volunteers in that capacity at the moment, but notwithstanding, that's something the council would like to consider in terms of facilitating that process. We'd have to explore what would be involved in managing that, in terms of, but we do have a proactive approach in terms of where residents seek to effectively take care of their own verges. Staff will attend to actually collect the debris. That's something that we do currently, an ad hoc reactive approach. That there is, just talking out loud, maybe there's some opportunities to further promote that. But yeah, there's certainly opportunities. I'd need to explore what that means in terms of implications, because with respect to volunteers comes equipment and training and road safety, and then so there's, with a volunteer graffiti removalist, for instance, there's a fair bit that goes into managing that resource as well.
Question for that. For example, the graffiti people, they're working on sometimes on under bridges and things where there's roads anyway, so they have to go through a safety thing as well.
Councillor Tooley.
Yeah, on the GM point, I've had very, very passionate members of the community contact me and asking the very same thing: what can we do? my suggestion is that they come to the next meeting and use the forum. And I propose to them that a strategic move might be a motion that goes to the LGA OGM, because that comes up in April and that could be very powerful. I don't know about the timing, but if you were to get all of the councils to endorse that and to force a stance of the LGA, which is our peak body, and if we want our peak body to advocate on behalf of all councils, they do have a seat at the table with the minister. So that was my proposal. I was opposed to the way we went about that issue, you know that, but as I also stated, I'm not an advocate for GM food. I don't buy the stuff and I'd rather not have it. I just wasn't happy with the way we went about it in council, and I expressed that view. But that, I think, is a strategy that could have some weight. So that may end up with us, Paul, deciding to put maybe 1 or 2 motions to the OGM.
The mayor.
Couple of things. I wrote a letter to the Minister of Infrastructure or Minister of Transport, Corey Wingard, in regard to cleanliness and clean up and lack thereof. And he's granted me a meeting this week, although it's already changed, so we'll see how many times it changes. But that's as a direct result of that letter. In regard to GM crops, I'm not sure that putting it to the LGA is the best option. There's a group of 10 councils that create a precinct, and I actually think it sits there. That's our best opportunity to work with those councils and have a collective front, because that creates a precinct. And the Minister was quite clear around what the rules around getting GM status was. And unfortunately, many regional areas and many farmers want choice around GM. So I don't think we'll be very successful at the LGA being a statewide perspective. I think we're better off working with the 10 councils. And I know Onkaparinga, being the largest council in the state, have written some very, very strong letters back to the Minister. They're liaising. I am talking with Mayor Thompson around that, but certainly, you know, if I can be given some guidance by council as to what the next step, I think there is an opportunity to work with those 10 councils. They're all quite upset about it. I don't think it'd take much to get a collective. I think that's a better strategy. Appreciate that, you know, the LGA has a statewide focus, but I just don't think it's going to go. It's just not going to get up. It's not going to get up. Yeah, so I think we're better off working with the 10 councils or the other 9 councils. I certainly have responded to Mayor Thompson and the Mayor of Berry Barmera, Peter Hunt, is quite supportive of any action. So is Mayor Lange of Barossa Council. So I think there could be some collective weight through that avenue. Certainly, we can put it up to the LGA, but I think it'll fail. And I think that the regional communities and farming communities have been very strong with their support for GM crops and their choice, and I can't see them changing their mind.
Do you have a second question, Mayor? Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, I'd be happy to support a motion and notice along the lines of what the Mayor's saying. I do believe, as well as Onkaparinga, Barossa Council have also had some follow-up as well, and are strongly pursuing some further options. So I think working as a collective is really important. I think that is a motion and notice would be the way to go. So I support that.
Any further discussion? Councillor Fraser.
I have another question on page 29 with street cleaning. a couple of Sundays ago, I was out walking very early. So they were doing some cleaning outside Grace Optometrists. So I don't know whether that was Grace themselves doing that. It looked like it was just a hire machine that they were using on the footpath. So it certainly came up really well, but I don't think that was a council operation, was it, on a Sunday morning?
Mr. Levine?
Luckily, I've got my team leader of town services in the gallery. He's confirming that wasn't our council officers. It may have been the adjoining private property owner. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Councillor Davies.
Yeah, so I just wanted to mention on the GM crops, I think, yeah, we should do something where sort of, I guess, not as affected as other councils in terms of the amount of effort we put into it, but I think it really is like, it would be one thing if we heard that, oh, well, Barossa's got it because they, had all of this, all of this wine industry and everything to protect, whereas Gawler didn't get it. I'd be like, oh, okay, we didn't quite fit in the criteria. But if it just all gets, every council applies, every council gets blocked, it feels like a political game. And that's, something that all those councils went for public consultation. They spent thousands of dollars on this. I just don't think it's really acceptable from the state government to give councils an option, theoretically, get them to spend lots of money on it, and then say, yoink, we never intended to give it to anybody. So yeah, I'm in support of writing something, whatever form that's in.
Yeah, I just had actually a question to the Mayor. She was speaking pretty strongly about the direction on the LGA, sort of saying, oh, I don't feel like it's going to work. I was just going to say, how would it hurt a two-pronged approach? Like work collaboratively with the other 10 councils, as you suggested, which I don't think is a bad idea, but then also maybe have a little bit of LGA buy-in. I mean, we're only talking about a potential motion. If it doesn't get up, we can leave that to the vote on the night. I'm just a little bit confused on why it's seeming like it's one way or the other. So I just, yeah, that was probably more for Karen, if I could.
I guess I'm giving my opinion, Councillor Shanks, on the best, most effective way of lobbying, because we're talking about Genetically Modified Crops Management Act 2004. We're talking about legislation, and the best way to manage this process is through, in my opinion, lobbying efforts to the government. The ministers made their decision. That was the process. The LGA, any decision from the LGA or any decision through the LGA won't have any weight, because it was councils that needed to actually go through this process. So that's my opinion of somebody who's been involved with the LGA for a while. I think that we need to work with what the legislation is, what the process is, and I think lobbying efforts is in fact the best spot. If you want, all councils in South Australia had an opportunity to put their toe in the water for GM-free and go through a public consultation process as per the requirements when they changed the legislation. And 10 councils did that. And those 10 councils are all connected to each other in a peri-urban formation and have a significant amount to lose through their farmers, particularly around Onkaparinga, Barossa, Adelaide Hills, but also here in Gawler, as we know. So I think there is a real opportunity to create a precinct. There is an argument there. There's the view from a number of the farmers, and this is via Onkaparinga Council as well, have done a lot of engagement with their organic farmers. And they believe there is a strong argument if we all work together. So I think that's the better option. I just going through the LGA, I think you'll find it will fail. And yeah, council entitled to do that, but I just, and you can certainly raise the profile, but I'm not sure if that's the most effective way to actually get the attention of the minister. I think working together with the other 9 councils is far better way, and it has much more clout. And you would also address the need to get, I think it's economic outcomes or market outcomes for your argument. The LGA doesn't have the capacity to do that.
Any other questions? Councillor Fraser.
I just have another question. When I was walking the other morning on the Sunday morning again at 7:30, Drake's had a big blower out doing their kapa, and they just blow it onto the street. Is there actually legislation against that? I mean, those gutters around that area are bad anyway, but they just blow everything out onto the footpath.
Who can answer that?
I think it best fits in my area, and if it did, it would come under a local nuisance sort of requirement. But I'll have to take that one on notice just to refer to and get a bit of clarity from yourself, Councillor Fraser, on exactly where the litter was coming from and whether it was private property out onto public land or already on public land and just moving it. So, okay. I'll have to take that on notice and provide a detailed response.
Any further questions regarding business arrival? No, I'll move. Oh, sorry, Councillor Toohey. 7 point. I'm catching up here. 7 point. Okay, Councillor Shanks, you got a question? No, yeah. Okay, yeah, Councillor Toohey.
Chair, I'd like to move an alternative motion. The first point is the same. We note the draft Gawler Beautification Plan report. My second point is that the draft Gawler Beautification Plan be put out for public consultation as per the usual consultation process. And
could I just, it's my fault here, could I just keep your motion aside? There was going to be a presentation before this item, Councillor Toohey, it's my mistake. So could you just hold those thoughts? And I'll call on the 2 gentlemen, give the presentation, please.
okay.
Right, good evening, everyone. So tonight I'll be presenting the draft beautification plan. I think it was about 3 months ago we came here and we, I guess, went through where we were heading and seeking direction. And I guess we went away with the intent of developing a draft plan to come back to you to get feedback. Now, what I'll do is I'll run through the front relatively quickly, but then we'll get to the actual beautification plan. And tonight we've actually just got the report up on the slide. So if there's any particular pages that you've made notes on or queries, it'll be really easy for us to talk directly to those pages. So the purpose is still the same, and this is really about identifying beautification strategies for the town. And I guess we've worked really closely with council staff on this, both on the delivery and the maintenance side as well, to actually understand what the implications will be for some of these beautification strategies. And from that, we've developed a series of, I guess, capital works, but also maintenance. So it's sort of twofold. It's actually doing new projects, but then also enhancing the maintenance side. And I guess last time we presented, we spoke quite a lot about the DIP team maintenance, or DITs now, and the division of where their obligations sit as well. So we've got some direction on that part as well, but we're trying to now give sort of clear guidance and strategy on how to implement both of these to achieve greater beautification. So the scope is still really the same. It was the 7 main entries and then a series of roundabouts throughout the town. And yes, the beautification has some really clear project principles and strategies that can be developed throughout the whole town, but for the purposes of this plan, we've illustrated the actual entries and roundabouts. So I'll skip through the initial site survey, which we went through last time, but really that just showed where the Gawler land was and the DIPT land. And I think, that was actually, it's really good to understand that. And that will be one of the hard things to, I guess, convey to the community as well. I know when they ask questions about why isn't that being maintained? It is always a question. So if we then we then had the council member consultation. So we went through your feedback last time. This is summarised. Then part C, so case studies and examples. Now, we touched on these briefly last time, but I'll go through them again. So some of these are actually suggested by yourself. The first one is Tanunda, and this is Murray Street. Now, this is really well maintained. It's got a high level of maintenance, irrigated trees, formal stone walls, and it does give that gateway feel to the town, which I think everyone really likes. And there's some things to sort of take note from that one. The next one is Murray Bridge in Adelaide Road. Now, this one's relevant because they had really big, wide verges, which had a lot of, I guess, some people describe them as scrappy sort of gums and sort of mallee planting. They actually went along and cleared out a lot of these, almost I'd say 80% of the existing trees and shrubs in these big, wide verges. And then they've been putting in new tree planting, irrigated lawn, seating, shelters, and I guess bringing the amenity up. And that has made a really big difference when you drive into Murray Bridge now, and that sense of entry, and you get that sort of green feel. The next one in Adelaide, so Sir Donald Bradburn Drive, they've done some formal tree planting within the medians, and then formal gravel and also native grasses and shrubs. So less probably removal of existing trees and more infill planting. The next one is a local one. It was a Gawler Eastlink Road. So very, very new project that has been undertaken. And you can see it involves, I guess, the roundabouts and the medians and the verges. I mean, this has been a huge project for yourself, and it is got some of the key things that we're looking for on the beautification strategy. Then the next one is the Wollonga Avenue of Honour. I'm not sure if many of you have driven this road, but it's on the way to Victor Harbour. And again, this is a big, wide, central sort of verge, which I assume is actually maintained by DIPT. It was cleared of the existing trees and shrubs and new oak trees planted. This is actually one of the projects that I did back a while ago, but the trees are probably about 7 years old now. They're not actually irrigated. They have a water truck at the start, but they get higher rainfall down here as well. So there's one thing to note, but it's very simple. It's literally tree planting and then just dryland grass, which is slashed on a sort of ongoing basis. So from this, we developed the principles and the strategies. And I guess I'll go through these because these are quite important for what we want the beautification plan to be. So the first one is town pride. I think that goes back to what the community are actually asking for. They want to be really proud of their town and know that they're in a beautiful setting, this regional country feel. The next one is bold and simple. So what we've learned from looking at a lot of different case studies in towns is that bold, simple designs are the most effective, and they're easier to maintain. They're going to give the most impact, and it's also about most of the time you're driving at 60 k's an hour. So if we get too fussy, you're actually going to lose the big impact. So just keep it bold and simple. Think about that legacy. It's a great opportunity for us to start thinking about what's a legacy for the town of Gawler. And you do have to make some hard decisions about removing things now, but planting trees for the future and setting up that long-term vision. The environment and greening. So I think we can hopefully achieve a lot of this, and there's some good wins on this sort of pillar. Then the management and maintenance side, and this is such an important one. I know it comes at the back end, but it needs to be put at the front end almost, and understanding when we do the budgeting, what do we actually need to factor in for the ongoing management and maintenance. Then we've got the project strategies. So this is what's actually tangible. So that's new strategic tree planting, improved maintenance, existing vegetation management, and that can be removal and pruning, new signage and roadside infrastructure. And this is not just new things, but it's also reducing some of the clutter and trying to understand what's the bare minimum we need. But if you drive along some of the roads, we're starting to see a lot of, I guess, infrastructure clutter. And again, keep it bold and simple. Road renewal is part of this. So we talked a bit about line marking and curbing and the difference that can make for the general appeal. And then the rubbish and general cleanliness as well. And that's those discussions with DIPT. So it's part of the desired character. And then there are some current and planned projects which are already happening, which it's worth noting in the beautification plan. So we have the Eastlink Road, Walker Place, Murray Street Stage 6, the roundabouts, and then we actually have a list of all the other little projects as well, which are sort of bubbling along in the background. So now the actual beautification plan. And what we've done is that we've had an initial go at actually sorting these in priority, but we would love your feedback today on what you would think would be the priority projects. This plan identifies the roundabouts as one of the main priorities. Then it goes into Main North Road South, Main North Road North, Red Banks, Barossa Valley entrance, Ryde entrance, Carlton, then Riggs Hill. But this is all subject to discussions, funding, and I know this is a very flexible thing. You might find you actually are doing a road renewal in this area, so let's fast track, the beautification on there. So it'd be good to get your feedback, but I wouldn't see that as a fixed, linear sort of, timeline. So what we've done is some really high-level illustrations, both, I guess, montage and plans. Now these are very indicative, so I don't want you to think this is exactly what's proposed, because each design has to go through a detailed design, consultation with stakeholders, budget allocation. But we wanted to get the discussion going, and a lot of people, especially the community, can understand these images, but it's hard to read the plans. So we've shown a range of different tree species: evergreen, native, deciduous, and winter and summer. But again, welcome everyone's feedback, and I know, that'll be a robust discussion. So the roundabouts, this is really simple. All we're doing here really is, planting a mass ground cover like a pig face, some compacted sand, and then looking at some feature trees. Keeping it really simple, but the impact is big. And, if you were to do that on all the roundabouts, I think that would be a good, easy win for beautification. So Main North Road South now. Now, I guess the underpass has been talked about a lot as far as picking up rubbish. And so we've talked about how we're going to approach that with DIPT. But then this illustration is showing the tree planting. And on the right-hand side, we have an example, I guess, deciduous tree. It could be an oak tree. And then on the left-hand side, we have natives. And the natives you could do in a more organic planting structure, and the deciduous in maybe a more formal grid to give that sort of look and feel. But we haven't shown any particular planting understory. So this is just showing for this one, effectively a dryland grass that would get slashed, and you might have a mulch ring under them. But I think in an area like this, that's actually a good strategy because of your proximity to the road. You don't actually want to be doing regular maintenance to, say, detailed planting right next to the road reserve. So I think it's thinking about how it can be maintained as well as what the impact is. So then if we look at Main North Road, the north entrance, now this is looking at some, I guess, removing some of the existing trees, and then we've shown a tree like a jacaranda on the left-hand side, which would give a really big impact and, would have that town identity. We've also shown a possible new town sign, and this could be, I guess, a totem, or it could be a piece of art as well. But this is an area where, it's a good opportunity if you wanted to do, say, more detailed planting or like a native meadow. You actually locate them with something like a feature to make the most of it, rather than trying to do it for kilometres and kilometres of the verge. You get more impact putting it in a prominent spot like this. So Red Bank's entrance. I mean, this one is a little bit of a clean slate down the middle. As you know, there's very little here, and showing vegetation management on the right-hand side, where we're removing the existing sort of trees and some of the smaller ones, and new jacarandas throughout. Barossa entrance, so Lindot Road, and this is one where we actually might be able to fast track this one. There's discussions about possible funding for this one. But this is also a good one to discuss the idea of actually removing trees to put in new trees. So as you know, along Lindot, there's a lot of existing trees. Now, they're not consistent, they're a little bit scrappy, and one idea for the beautification plan is to remove these trees and put new tree planting. But it's a great one to discuss because, obviously there's going to be some feedback from the community on this and whether this is a good pilot project. So I think, that's what we're seeking feedback on tonight, are ideas like this. And how bold do we want to be with some of these streets? So you can see here, I mean, this part doesn't actually require the tree removals, it's further down. But this is sort of that big wide road reserve, and you can see, you would get good impact, and this would be a nice quick win. I can't imagine too many people being upset about just planting new trees in this section, but it's down further where we need to have that open and frank discussion. So Ride, we've actually got areas of, I guess, infill tree planting where there's some good trees, and we can look to keep that. We've got some roundabouts, and then areas where we can just come along and do new tree planting as well. And so what we're showing here are a smaller, say, deciduous tree on the left-hand side where we have the power lines above. So we do need to be, aware of that and comply with the current guidelines. And then you could have a taller tree on the right-hand side. I guess the thing to note is, although a lot of these roads have paddocks right now, in 10 years' time, this could be more development. And so we could almost get in early before the development having to start to set up these trees as well. Carlton entrance. So we know a lot of development is happening along here. We're starting to see some big construction, and so I think getting the trees in here is really, really important. But what we've shown on the right-hand side is retaining the Melaleucas. It's actually Melaleuca Drive. So this is showing, for example, if you kept the existing trees on the right and then did new ones on the left. Ridge Hill entrance, so quite a long one with big, long, windy roads. And you do have sort of that country feel as you come in with the views. And this might be a better spot for natives as well. It sort of has a bit less urban. So with that, we've done a bit of a summary for tree selection considerations. So one of the big things is that we're recommending watering and irrigation where possible to all new trees. So I guess the tree is always going to go better if we can get irrigation to it. And I guess the guys are starting to work out that it's actually the cost of taking a watering truck out there do add up. So where possible, this report recommends putting in irrigation. Where it's not feasible, that's where you do the watering truck program. And there's also, I know there's the program for the bucket to the residents in some of the urban environments, like adopt a tree. So all these things are trying to give the trees the best chance. But I think this needs to be strongly factored in when we start the budget. So we can't just go plonk some trees, and we do need to factor in making sure they get established, and that's those first 3 years. But to be honest, the tree is going to grow better the more water it has, and especially with your climate change policy as well, the more trees, the bigger canopies we can get, the better for the town. The other one is the clearance to power lines and services. So we've included some of the dot points of what we need to comply with, and then the offsets to roadways. Now, I would say that Dip D in the last 3 years has become a lot more approachable as where we can have trees and how close to curbs. So we were doing this report 4 years ago. We wouldn't have been allowed to put a lot of these trees in, but Dip D have sort of started to relax, and that's helped out a lot. And then the last one is really about that maintenance and the ongoing maintenance for the trees. So we've got together a preliminary tree list of evergreen tree species and also deciduous tree species. Now, again, we would value your input on these as well, and we've had input from the council staff and feedback on which trees are performing better and which ones also require less maintenance. So we are trying to balance all of the needs, and I would say there's no such thing as a perfect tree. That every tree is going to drop leaves, whether it's evergreen or deciduous, and it is really a management thing. So whether you want to deal with all the leaves in a short period or whether you're dealing with leaves over a longer period, and I guess all these decisions need to just be factored in. So the last one is the implementation, and what we've, I guess, prepared is sort of an example project plan of how we can go about implementing some of these actual projects. So the first one is identifying projects. Now, we've given examples here, but we could, for example, Lindot Road, you might look at identifying half of Lindot Road as a project. Then it needs to be scoped, and that includes actually starting to look at some detailed design, working out what the costs are for this, and then project endorsement, which is really important. So get everyone on board, the stakeholders, including yourself, and then final detailed design, project construction. So it's not like this is a shovel-ready report. This is really a high-level strategy, which then hopefully guides future smaller projects throughout the town. And one of the big things is that coordination with state government, and I think that's starting to happen more and more, and that just needs to be carried through. So that's a very, very quick summary of the beautification plan, but I hope you've had a chance to sort of read over it, and yeah, I'll open up to the floor for questions.
Is there any questions? Mayor? Yes.
Thank you for that. Just, we can't even get DIT to slash grass at least once a year in Williston. So, I love elements of this, but in the end, are we taking over DIT's land completely, which surely it should be a partnership, we just haven't got the traction at all. And I was trying to visualise the entrance north into Gawler, into Williston, both Red Banks Road and also Main North Road, and I just couldn't get past the grass. It doesn't matter how nice the tree looks. As soon as you have wanton lawn grass, which is upwards of 4 or 5 foot high, and high, you've got the same problem. Just a question on that northern entrance along Main North Road. There are some significant trees, pine trees, that have been a long time on the right-hand side as you come into it, and you're suggesting removal of the specimen trees. It's quite a deep slope, but the trees have been removed. I would have thought you could tidy those trees up and maintain it, you get the same effect. You do the other side, which is there, but rather than strip out 80, 90-year-old trees, you could work with what you've got. But yeah, that's just a comment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, trees that are identified as good trees should be maintained, and it's not that. I think this is a bit too, it's a very broad brush sort of showing illustrations of what could be, but when it came down to actually doing the detailed design, if we assessed that these trees were healthy, you know, and had another 50 years of good life in them, then yes, you know, and they work with the, you know, I guess the beautification strategy that everyone agrees on, then yes, they should be kept. I'm not for, you know, just removing trees for the sake of removing trees. So yeah, agree that, you know, they should be assessed on a tree by tree basis. On the, I guess, the dip tea side, I think that's a discussion which is happening, and I'm very aware of the difficulties that are having. I think what we're trying to do is propose something, so at least that conversation can happen. And I guess the Wollonga Avenue of Honour one is a good example of where tree planting is happening in a dip tea road verge. I'm not sure of the details of whether they slash more now, but what we're not trying to do is do fussy stuff in those dip tea areas. Keep it simple, yeah, because we know that it's already going to be that challenge.
Councillor Toole.
Thank you for your presentation. And I like most of what you put in the report, but I need to know what the community thinks of it. I also like the use of deciduous trees in their place. I like the examples that you've given. I think all of us have been to most of those places, seen that impact. You might have also done North Terrace, if you didn't, but North Terrace they took out and they put advanced plane trees in and changed that whole boulevard. I'm very familiar with Lindop Road. I live very close to that intersection. And those of us, I've lived there since 1980. Those of us, we never understood why they planted those numbers. They are ugly. They're the wrong species. They're now heavily stressed. They're massively ugly through, and it's a cost every year. So, as you know, the right tree not only looks fantastic, but it doesn't interfere with boundaries. My question, have you turned your mind to any costing? Is there any idea, because you did say one thing we need to do after we've done some wide consultation, you said we need to turn our mind to prioritising. That to me screams a workshop. We haven't had that opportunity to do that in the draft. And in prioritising, you've got to be mindful of cost and where you can get, I think you said yourself, an immediate impact. You can pick the right ones. So have you turned your mind to any costing associated with those? So if we are to have a workshop and say, okay, here's 20 possibilities. We want to be governed by impact. Thank you, but you got it.
Through you, Chair. We don't have any set costings on the projects yet, but that's definitely one of the next steps that we need to start scoping out. And I think we're discussing with Sam about that and some possible projects and start to understand what those dollars might be. We have identified in one of the appendices like cost per tree and cost per maintaining a tree per year, but that doesn't really quantify what, say doing Lindop Road would be, because there's so many other factors in that. So yeah, that is, I think, a good thing to do. And for example, a roundabout could be quantified quite easily. I would have thought, what would it cost to do a roundabout? Yeah.
The only sort of benchmark we've got at the moment, what I had around, is that we know to put those advanced trees on the Gawler East Link Road that we spoke about, we know that's about $500,000. That's the cost to get those.
For how many trees?
Along the whole route. I think Sam might be defined, but that's to prepare the ground and to buy advanced trees and get them in. That is about $500,000, I think. Sam might want to speak about it. And that's for the length of the Gawler East Link Road on both sides.
Happy to answer that through Chair. Is that a subsequent? Yep. Just clarifying that there was certainly a very expensive tree planting exercise. It was more costly in that circumstance because we had to protect the sewer that was directly underneath some of the central islands. So there was a larger tree pit excavation that was required. That wouldn't be in this case. You're right. There was 270 trees, roughly, $550,000 budget. It's come in well under budget, I will say. Just haven't got the exact number. I think it's about $100,000 below that. But effectively, there is the circumstances with Linddock Road or other situation would highly likely be, not as costly per tree.
Through your chair. I would add that planting in urban environments and infrastructure environments does cost more than rural environments. So say if you identified a more open area, it should cost less because of the lack of services. Obviously, where you're near a footpath, you have to cut pavements, it's going to cost more, and underboring irrigation. Whereas if you have big reserves, it's a lot cheaper.
Councillor Kosh and Councillor Campbell and Councillor Hugh. And should you turn your mic off, please? Councillor Turney, turn your mic off, please.
Oh, yeah, look, thanks. Look, when I've been involved in this design sort of process, my background's in this area, I always start with the maintenance budget, and I always look at the resources available. That's financial, human, physical resources that I need. When I read this, I think it's almost backwards. I mean, I always start from that point and work back, because if you can't afford, if you haven't got the finances, the human and physical resources, the landscape will fail. So my concern is that. The other concern I have is this is predominantly on DIT land, which then would mean we would have to then take over the maintenance of it, I'd imagine. That's what it looks like to me, because I don't think DIT is going to say, well, you plant out this area and we're going to up our service levels, because I mean, I've had areas that I've had to maintain where we've planted trees and it's double, triple the cost of maintenance that before, where I could run just a slasher through it, I'd have to then run front decks through. So therefore, all of a sudden, it double, triples the actual cost of maintaining that. So I like the concepts, but unfortunately, I don't know whether it's realistic, considering the requirement from DIT to plant on their land, and the extra cost that will incur to manage those plants on DIT land. So I just feel that they're not going to up their service levels for us. Yeah, and also I'm a bit concerned about the closeness to the trees to a lot of the road edges. I mean, I'm an arborist, so I love trees, but these are the red flags that sort of that come up when I've read it. So I have some concerns with it. Thank you.
Councillor Sample.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a great report, and it's where we can start to think about it. As Councillor Cooley said, we organised 20 trees the other day for 21,000, so it's not cheap to plant trees along the side of the road. And I noticed in the trees that you picked out here, certainly emphasised on the jacaranda trees, like they have all the way around the little country town of Para, which absolutely looks fantastic. But the Gawler hybrid bottle brush is a unique bushy type tree that, and that's not listed anywhere. And over a period of time, in my time at Gawler, there's been various people, whether it be Elwyn Ainsbury or Grant Himmeling or whoever else, may have an idea about a tree in a bush. And one of our streets that we certainly feel proud of is the Bohemia tree that's in 19th Street. So, I mean, I suppose where I'm coming from, the trees that you've mentioned here, they all look really good, but one of the problems with the Gawler hybrid bottle brush and the jacaranda, they look beautiful when they're in flag. When they drop their flags, they can be a problem with drainage and all those sort of things and so forth. And one of the most popular trees, which always looks impressive, that we have on many streets around the town, is the prunus trees that come out in a beautiful pink flower, and then they've got that maroon look all the year round. They really don't do any damage. But who is the one that comes up with suggesting the trees you put in your program? Where does that come from? Does that come from our department or?
Through you, Chair. So it's a combination of myself, council staff, both maintenance and design side, but we're here tonight to listen to you as well, and I've written down those tree species. So I think that's not a definitive list. It's one to start discussions really. And like I said, there's no perfect tree, and they always cause debates because some people love a tree and the next person will, dislike it. So it is a hard one. But I think what we do want to do is choose the right tree for the urban environments or the correct environment. So I think sometimes in Gawler we've got the wrong tree in the wrong place, and we just want to make sure that we actually think about it, put the right tree in the right spot here.
Yeah, I'd love to take you for a drive around and show you. And I'm so happy to hear that you're going to get rid of those ugly trees that are on Lindop Road, because, 65 years ago when I attended the Gawler High School at that time, all of us kids had things called Arbor Days, and we planted them trees. It was the biggest mistake I ever made when I went to school. But I also, one other, finally, to do with the entrance. You started off the entrance at the, the bypass. But our entrance starts, another 2 kilometres down the road. Did you miss those rusty things on the side of the road? Have you got any ideas what we could do with them?
I didn't want to open up a can of worms.
No, well, don't worry.
We tactically started it.
Okay. Councillor Hughes is next. Have you got a question?
Thank you. I do have a question, but yeah, overall, it's I see it as a high-level strategy and then the individual projects. So I understand how that works, and then we'd scope the projects and put those individual projects out to consultation. So I understand that. I do think it's really important that we actually highlight local Indigenous plants, because with climate change, we won't be able to keep the water up to a lot of the species. Even the Western Australian natives that we've got there, Playford Council spends hundreds of thousands. They spend really big dollars on their trees. They've just put in for 2 very high-paid tree specialists to work for the council to try and help them keep their trees going. So it's really important that you get the right species. I do think if we do remove trees, that we do actually recognise, especially pines, that they are actually a food tree for parrots and cockies and things like that. And the food source, any hollows, even sticks and things like that are really needed. So urban biodiversity, if we are looking, this is Gawler Council is looking for funding, I think they really have to look at the sustainability, water sensitive design sort of stuff to get water to the plants from the roadsides, and look at species that are going to actually add to the local urban biodiversity as well. I don't think there's enough of that in the plan. We do have high numbers of urban reptiles and animals, and they do actually unfortunately rely upon our street trees and our roadside vegetation. In some cases, it's our last remaining native vegetation in some areas, which is really important. There's especially the ash trees, really problematic trees that you've got. Anything that self-seeds as far as deciduous trees. I am really concerned that you've budgeted here for $20,000 a year for deciduous trees. Is that, if this plan goes ahead, we've now got to then ongoingly spend $20,000 every year just picking up dead leaves, because we know that they pollute and they drop all the leaves at once, and they drop a huge nutrient load that kills the fish and everything else in their waterways. And is that 20 grand an ongoing thing for planting deciduous trees?
Sorry, through your chair. I'm not sure where that 20, that was, I think Sam was referring to how much it cost.
It does sort of come through. There's an ongoing cost of $20,000.
Yeah, through the chair. That relates to cleaning on Murray Street. So that was purely in regards to increased frequency of cleaning of the town centre CBD in the financial.
There's also, it actually mentions deciduous trees and leaflet extra cleaning of that. There's a special separate item.
Oh, sorry, that was just referring to our street sweeping program. So it's probably slightly in regards to looking at the frequency of that program per se. We're actually looking at a separate reviewing that contract in the near future. And in terms of going back out to market and looking at the service levels provided part of that contract. So this particular project's not saying through, I suppose, the body work that Alex's company has done additional street sweeping per se, but effectively as the service levels that we currently have, looking to embed them and those service levels. So we don't actually reference, I don't believe, an extra $20,000 per se in the report, only as it relates to the Murray Street precinct.
Yeah, the way it looks to me, it wasn't related to Murray Street, it looked like a specific thing for township deciduous tree, is the way it reads to me. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. A lot of the pictures don't show overhead power lines, and I'm pretty sure that every couple of them do, like Ride Street. I'm pretty sure that all the arterial roads have power lines, and just some commentary around the choice of tree under those power lines and what the canopy will be when that tree is fully grown. Is it going to be a dwarf kind of variety so that it sits under the, and how effective will the canopy be in that regard?
Yeah, through your chair. We haven't removed any power lines off the images, so if they're shown on the photo, they're there currently. If they're not, they're where that photo is taken, there's not power lines. We've also identified which trees are approved under the SAPN power line, guide. So SAPN actually put out a list saying, we accept these trees. Look, some of them still grow, close to the power lines, and SAPN will have to prune them, but they're trees that they're happy with that don't look like, butchered sort of stems when they get bigger. So ideally you're planting trees within the approved SAPN list, and then, they're trees that don't grow too big and they don't look ridiculous when they're sort of chopped in half, that it's a smaller canopy. Yes, you're not going to get the shade that you get from a bigger tree, but one of the things that SAPN has done just in the last year is they've updated their code to, depending on the voltage of the power lines, they now allow some trees to actually grow through the power lines. I'm not sure if you've seen, but they've released a new diagram and they sort of prune just around, and so they're happy for a tree to go around power lines in the low voltage. On, I think, the 66 kV and the bigger ones is, you've got to keep the full clearance. But like Dipsy, they're relaxing as well. So we are seeing some wins with those big infrastructure, bodies of accepting trees in the urban environments. And I think that's only going to hopefully continue in the right direction, in that, the benefits of the tree, I think, far outweigh, a half-hour power failure to 3 houses where they have to, they'll come and prune the tree.
Councillor Fraser.
I was actually quite impressed with this. I'm only a lay person. I don't have the horticultural skills that some of the councillors do. I actually like the impact of the jacaranda. I understand its flower could be a bit of a problem, but I also like the fact that you've got each entrance different, so that we're not just, it's just not all the same, same old. But I like the variance in the deciduous and the non-deciduous as well. I think that just gives a different visual effect as you're coming into the town. And another thing I like is the signs, the new signs. I don't like the Gawler sign, but the new sign with Town of Gawler on it, I think that's somewhere where we could definitely go as well. But my question was going to be costing, but you've already answered.
Any further questions? No. Thank you very much for your presentation. And sorry we're a bit late starting, but that's the way it goes. Thank you very much.
No, thank you.
I'll now move back to Councillor Tooley to present his motion.
Thank you, Chair. I'm doing, as I'm told we're allowed to do, what we have before us is a recommendation, and we can replace that. So I have a recommendation, which I now talk to. Obviously, if people don't like it, they can offer amendments or they can vote it down. So my motion is that we note the draft plan report that the draft plan now be put out for public consultation and feedback as per our usual process. And that 3, based on the community feedback, that the draft beautification plan is updated and comes back to a future workshop before returning to a future IES. Now, I've thought about this as I've read the report, and I'm even more convinced this is the best way to go, having heard our presenter speak tonight. He told us a number of things, that this was to develop a draft plan. We were to get feedback. Tonight is part of tabling that draft, part of getting that feedback. And we need to ask the community. That's the one thing we haven't done. And I opposed the process that we used last time, where we bypassed the community to get to where we are now. Now that's happened, can't turn the clock back. As this report acknowledges, what we have is the input from staff and the input from elected members, but we don't have any input from the community. We also need to recognise that this plan is in response to the community. I do believe that it was Councillor Goldstein who initially brought before us a proposal that we, and it was a humble amount, I think 15,000 or something, to make an improvement. And I remember clearly he said that he was approached by people as he prepared to run for election, that people said this was a common theme. And there were other members in the chamber who echoed the same view, that we had a lot of people in the community contacting us to say that cleanliness of the main street, entrances were all very important. So the trigger from Councillor Goldstein, which led to where we are now, is a good thing, but what it has lacked is community input. And we've already heard some contentious issues here tonight. We've heard some members say that they like deciduous trees. Some say they don't like them. Some people say they don't like the species that are in there. And we've also heard comments about, well, what about DIT and things like that? And we've also been told that, or advice that what we have to do is prioritise. Now, my view is, if we are truly elected members and we truly represent the community, then we can go no further. The proposal that we should adopt this is not acceptable. It's not acceptable to our community. What is acceptable to our community is that we've got to this stage, and we all recognise the work of our consultants is robust, is substantial, and it really gives an opportunity for people to get their teeth in. We now need a proper process, well advertised. And I saw in the officer's report, it seemed to be saying, well, hang on, if you do this, you're going to spend $10,000 more. Look, every single plan we put out for community consultation has a fee. That's just what we do. Biodiversity management plan, community plan, every plan we put up, Main Street redevelopment plan, the Carbeacon plan, every one of them, we put them out for community consultation. Now, this has the potential to cost millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. We're already criticised for getting it wrong. On many occasions, Lindop Road's a classic. So we need to know what the community think. If we go to community consultation and we get a rubber stamp and an endorsement of this, fantastic. If they give us some great ideas and say, you know what, you've forgotten, we take it on board. That's my second point. We then enter the third point. We then modify, as we normally do, based on the feedback, we then update the plan. And then the idea of the workshop is we need to get that opportunity. I've heard Councillor Kosh and Councillor Hughes tonight talk about the types of trees. I've heard Councillor Sample talk about them. We need to have that discussion and listen to those views, and we need to make. I agree with the Gawler hybrid bottle brush.
30 seconds.
That should be on the list. So a workshop allows us to do our job. We chew it over with the unrestrictions of a workshop, and then we eventually come back to a future IES. So I think I'm very pleased with that wording, and I think it turns this into a much better process that can be owned by the community, owned by us, and we can stand proud and say, we've done what the community wanted.
Thank you, Councillor. Can we have a seconder? Councillor Fraser, you wish to speak?
I just have a question I need to ask before. On Carlton Road, is the trees to go on Carlton Road, are they part of Springwood's development? Because I think Springwood is part of their thing that they'll do Carlton Road up. Is that right?
Councillor, sorry, Mr. Bellino.
Yeah, through you, Chair. If that's certainly the case, and I think the beautification plan notes that would be undertaken, in conjunction with Springwood and rolling out of that development, because they're obligated to upgrade Carlton Road, upgrade that verge, and put the car parking in and a footpath, as well as trees, because they'll have houses fronting Carlton Road at that point. So it wouldn't be a project, that instance wouldn't be a project that council would fund, albeit we would be concentrating on the Melaleuca side in regards to infill planting and tidying that up.
Do you wish to say anything else? Any other discussion? Councillor Koch.
Look, I can understand where Councillor Tilley's coming from. That's fine, but unfortunately, I can't support this because what we have here is you've got it's established design principles around putting landscapes around streetscapes, and in particular, the speed that vehicles travel. So, so you've got the visual impact. So you have bold statements, and then you've got certain distances that you have to plant trees, etc., and landscape furniture, etc., away from the road. So, in practice, I doubt whether the design is going to change, because this is the design principles you use when you're designing roadside landscapes. So it really won't change. So to go out to the community and say, well, you tell us what you want, and then all of a sudden they say, well, we want, really intricate design landscapes like we see in developments. We've already heard tonight that that does not work, for maintenance and everything else. So I can't see really how the design would really change. I am concerned about the costing. There's no costing. I'm also concerned about the ownership and the liability that we potentially will have to take on from DIT if we do any landscaping. So I would actually like those questions answered, actually work out, when you talk to DIT and say, well, what is going to happen here? And, if they say, okay, that's fine, if you put stuff in, we're going to mow it. But if they say, no, we're only going to keep it at the same service level, that's the reality. So I really don't want to go out to the community with, I suppose, false expectations on what can be achieved, because the design essentially will stay the same, I'd imagine. It's not going to get more detailed. You're going to have a position where DIT is going to say yes or no, and then you've got your maintenance issues. So there's the cost, and then you've got all your capital, and then your capital and your ongoing costs. So I think all those items really need to be sorted out before we start going to the community and raising expectations, which at the end of the day, you probably won't be able to satisfy. So it's sort of again, I think it's a backward process, because as I said, when I'm involved in this sort of program, I start from the other end and work forward. This, to me, I understand people need to get designs up and blue sky thinking, but I've always worked the other way. So unfortunately, I do understand why people want to go to community consultation, but I can't support it. Thank you.
Councillor Goldston.
Thanks, yeah. As members would recall, I did instigate this project and have been pushing it now for a while. I had mentioned previously, Councillor Toy is correct, that the reason for promoting this was just a direct result of talking with residents during the campaign process prior to the elections. Residents made it quite clear to me that they wanted a number of things. They wanted the appearance of Gawler to improve. They wanted the entranceways to Gawler to be cleaned up and upgraded where possible. They wanted footpaths and nature streets to be cleaned up and better maintained. They wanted the main street paving to be cleaned. They wanted roundabouts upgraded and maintained. A couple of them also mentioned about increased lighting frequency. When you drive around and have a good look, especially in the older areas of Gawler South, Bevan
you'll see examples of what the residents are talking about. In some areas, footpaths are completely covered by gravel, dirt, tree litter. Nature strips are not being maintained or upgraded. Traffic islands banned in every painted. And line marking in some areas is pretty much non-existent. So all of the things that was raised to me are evident if you go into that. Good examples you can be seen of this in 12th Street, 15th Street, 20th Street, all the older streets. It's not so bad in the new areas. The proposals shown in the draft plan, I think, are brilliant. Examples of what the southern, northern and western entranceways could look like with relatively little outlay, show simple upgrades resulting in massive improvements. These and other proposals in the plan, including, for example, roundabout upgrades, are exactly what council should be spending its money on. Hopefully we can adopt and implement recommendations in the plan when it's finalised as a matter of urgency. I fully support the plan. Its completion and also support the recommendation, although I personally wouldn't bother to go out to public consultation. But I'm happy to support recommendations. One final comment in terms of this argument about dip land versus council land. Residents don't care about it. They don't care whether it's dip land or council land. They just see it as part of the law. It shouldn't be an excuse in my mind for not proceeding with entranceway upgrades. You know, this has been going on for 20, 30 years, and we don't further down the track. I just see that as an excuse. So, you know, I have to support recommendation.
The Mayor.
Thank you. Yeah, look, maintaining our streets, our verges, our sidewalks, our footpaths, our core business. And on that basis, I can't support this proposal. And in particular, based on community feedback, the plan is updated and comes back to a future workshop. So, for example, somebody might say, we don't like the Gawler hybrid bottle brush, and we want them removed from Redbacks Road and Mainlands Road, Williston, for example. It then will be incorporated in the plan as per this recommendation. So I think this recommendation goes too far. I think a simple public consultation process would be better. However, the concern is that people will assume that we're going to do everything in this plan. And we don't know how much that's going to cost. I think the plan's brilliant. I agree with Councillor Goldstein and what Councillor Tillman said, that, you know, much of what's in here looks fabulous, but what is the cost? Can we afford it? We're in deficit now, so we're just going to increase our deficit. We're going to become unsustainable. One of the core roles of elected members is to keep the activities of council under constant review. That's in the legislation. That's one of our core roles, is to keep activities of council under regular review. Now, you could argue, well, this is under regular review because we're improving, and I absolutely support improving our entranceways and having mature trees. But we do need our biodiversity as well. So at this stage, I can't support this. I think this goes too far, and we'll see what happens.
Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, I'd like to move an amendment that we go back to the original motion. I don't believe that's too big a change, so will you accept that amendment?
Can you say it again?
I'll say it again. I'd like to move an amendment that we actually go to the original motion. I don't believe that's a significant change. You've already allowed, but that just takes the consultation. It just keeps it as an overarching document, but it actually allows us to get on straight away, get these budget bits. Our budget process starts in a couple of weeks' time, and we want to actually get some of this work done. We've got ratepayers that have been asking us for many years now to get some of this work done. We want this work done as soon as possible. We want to be able to put this work out to tender. I think it's really important that we put some of the individual projects out to tender and consultation, but I think as an overall document, I think bringing it out for consultation now is going to confuse things and just delay the whole process.
I've been a slide. On the board, Councillor. Yeah, sorry. Councillor.
Chair, that's not an amendment, that's a complete change. I'm happy if my motion is defeated, that's democracy, and then someone can propose, but I've been pulled up many times and told, I'm sorry, the wording's too different. That's a complete different, that's not an amendment.
Yeah, I agree, having spoken to CEO. That's a new motion that can be looked into if the motion now on the floor is defeated. So I'll accept that after if this motion is defeated. You wish to speak again, Councillor? Ben, sorry, Councillor Tully, turn yours off, please.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to speak against the motion then. I think it's, yeah, it does delay the process, and I saw with the biodiversity plan how long that actually delays the process and actually changes the process and actually adds a significant cost. This whole process wasn't supposed to cost this much. I think it's important that we actually get on with this work. I agree with Councillor Bosch. A lot of this is standards that can't be changed. Even our species and things like that, we've already got recommended species. I do think it's important that elements of this will hit the ground as soon as possible. I think putting this out for consultation will make it really difficult for it to actually hit the budget process, which, as I said, starts in a few weeks' time. So, yeah, I'd like councillors to please vote against this motion, and then put the original motion up and get it made.
Councillor Shanks.
Yeah, firstly, I've just got a question if I can. How much has this plan cost to date to get to this, where we are right now?
I'll have to take it on notice in terms of the actual cost. The budget was $15,000. I believe we're within budget.
Did you get the answer, Councillor Shanks?
We're within budget? Yep, no worries. All right, no worries. Can I please speak to the motion?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I've just been listening to the conversation. I find it very interesting that some of the arguments around we need to run a few questions to ground before we go out to community consultation was actually used, because that's exactly the same argument I had around boundary reform. But look, we'll move on from that. I'm sort of picking up on the actual plan itself. My view on it is it's actually presented really, really well. It's engaging. It's sort of legible, which I think is really important for something that we would put out for community consultation. I do note that it's about 49 pages. And I also hear some of the more experienced councillors talk about community consultation dragging the process and confusing the process. I guess my response to that would be I think the community consultation needs to be looked at. I think that I completely agree. Community consultation can actually confuse the issue, but that's why the community consultation needs to be appropriate, needs to be targeted. What that plan actually is actually simple to follow. And I think it can probably even be simplified again with maybe a key takeaway sheet or something like that you might have heard me harping on about before, where it can really pull out a couple of the simple things about entrance statements, roundabouts, street cleaning and all that sort of stuff. And we can simplify it and ask the community what their expectation of town beautification is. and make it very clear that none of these projects are in the pipeline yet. We're just trying to see where your priorities are at. Where are your priorities as a community member, as a ratepayer? Would you be actually happy with us taking over a couple of verges, even though it's actually DIT land and it's their job to maintain it? Those are the sorts of questions we should be asking our community. This very easy graphic plan is a very good tool and a very good basis to be able to engage the community in trying to figure out what's their hit list. Because I'm listening to elected members' hit lists, and unfortunately, if we keep on going ahead with elected members' hit lists and we don't bring the people along for the ride, we keep on finding ourselves repeating history. Let's try something different. Let's support this. Let's work on the community consultation and let's get it right. If this is such a historic problem, as I'm listening to my colleagues talk about in the chamber, then let's not just rush it through because you feel like it's bottlenecked because we've got the next budget bid coming up. Let's make sure we get this one right and really, really engage simply, directly, and efficiently with the community and get that sort of feedback that then we can actually work on a very good foundation that we have here, because that plan actually has multiple projects. It's not just one that we're putting out for consultation. We're trying to see what interest is out there for the multiple projects. So let's look into that and let's talk about it again in the workshop. Let's get it right the first time. Let's not just base this all on our own opinions. And then maybe we can finish the project that's going to be the most efficient for what we have budget-wise, what our community expects, and what DIT are going to contribute. Let's just get it right. Let's not waste the time where we want to fast forward and jump the gun a bit. So that's my thoughts on it. So I'm happy to support this because it's community consultation. I do note that the in brackets it says as per town of Gawler's usual consultation process. To be honest, that makes me a little bit nervous because we don't get a good uptake. So I think there's a little bit of room we need to be better with to make sure that this is effective. But I think there's a lot of good that we can do, and there's a lot of opinion that we can draw in if we do it appropriately. And who knows, we might turn around and do the right entrance statements that the town actually wants done. So I'm happy to support this, and I hope all elected members do as well.
Any further discussion? Councillor Tully, you wish to close?
Thank you. We need to remember that this will shape the future look of our town if and when this is realised. And when it comes back to us after the workshops, it will probably have a motion that looks a bit like the original one. It will have a proposal about how you would adopt and approach the funding, that the funding will become a subject to budget bills. And we will come back with a priority list and we will propose those. No one is saying that we're going to grow the budget. No one is saying that the whole plan will be implemented immediately. The intent of this is that it is rolled out over time. So we're not going to blow the budget. That's how the budget approach will work. As we prioritise these over a number of years, hopefully the most important ones with the biggest impact will be done first. We should know that after we've had community consultation and after we've done our workshop. I would say it's about a delayed plan. We have never, ever stopped going to community consultation for its idiocy. We have never simply said, but you know what? We know best for the community plan. That's the most overarching plan. We know best. It'll complicate it if we ask people. We will just do it. We've never done that. We've had consultants tell us about Carbeethan and about the showground precinct, and they've done beautiful presentations, and they've come up with some great models. What if we just said to them, like this, we adopt it now. We don't consult with the sporting people, we don't consult with the community, we just do it. They would be outraged. If we consult, and I'll counter what Councillor Posh has said, I have never yet, in any of the consultations,
seen anybody come in with a totally left-wing, radical, bizarre change. I've never seen it. What they tend to do is say, you know what? You've given us a good starting point. It makes a lot of sense. But you know what? I'd like to comment on the following. And there's also a saying, everyone can have their say, but not everybody can have their way. That's democracy. So if you had one person who came up and said, you know what? I want a water fountain at the main entrance. Some would have us believe, see the monster we've created? We went to community consultation and they've told us they now want a water feature and a fountain at the entrance. Oh, what are we going to do? Well, you know what I think we'd do with that? We would note it and we'd say, you were the only person, thank you for that thought, but it now gets parked. It's the majority view. And if we get the majority view from our town that says, for the future, I'm going to live into this plan. I like what you've done. Here's a little bit of feedback on the tweaking. Or what if they just come back and say, bloody hell, that is fantastic. We've got a mandate. We've got a mandate to say we've got a master plan that the community likes. We can then boldly go forward into the next budgets over the next few years. And we can then say, we're going to put in a budget bit for $100,000 to do the eastern entrance and down Lindott Road. We're going to put number one priority on the southern entrance or the northern entrance. We will be the ones who will decide then, with their mandate, which ones we want to prioritise. And we will then ask our officers to produce a costing, and that will come to us under the normal process. And Mr. Delina will come back and say, well, I've done the full costing for Lindott Road, just to pick an example. To remove the trees is $65,000. To replace them is $100,000. And so it goes on. That's what we do. That's the proper process. And I really hope none of you vote against this, because I don't want your grandchildren, when we call a division, to see how you voted on this. Because if you do, you're basically saying you don't respect the voice of the people.
30 seconds.
You don't accept
Point of
their
order, point of order
consultation.
from the mayor. I think his tone's not correct. I don't know exactly the threat, it's just state. I don't think. I think he's making a statement in relation to how he would believe people should vote. I don't think it's threatening as such. In my opinion, I could be overruled, but excuse me, I'm not going to uphold the point of order. Sorry. And you're finished, Councillor Tooley. No, you are finished. Your time's up before I even said it. And once you call the mayor calls the point of order, you're about 1 second ago. So, no, you can't. So I'll put that motion. All those in favour? I can. And Councillor Shanks? That's those against? It's carried. Cody, he went home. He's not there. He went off about 5 minutes ago. I think when he started talking the second time. Okay, so that's carried. Right, 7.2. Division. Okay, all those in favour, please stand. No, you're not. I'll do Councillor Shanks first. Councillor Goldstone. Councillor Vallelonga. Councillor Tooley. Deputy Mayor Samble. Councillor Fraser. And Councillor Little. Those against, Councillor Kosh, Councillor Hughes, and the Mayor Redmond. It is carried. On the 7.2, get that? Just hold on a second. left the meeting, Councillor Code. David's left the meeting. I think he left about 5 minutes ago. I guess we looked up on the way ago. Councillor Shanks is now leaving the meeting as well. So we've lost 2. Yes, Mary, you got a question? I'm sorry.
Just a question on why a playground isn't being built, and we've got a very, very basic play space. It's unusual that we wouldn't get any play equipment in this open space area.
Mr. Bellina.
If through the chair, there's been some significant conversations and consultation over a number of years with this developer. There is primarily about the quantity and quantum of recreational assets to be provided in this open space. The staff here tonight, both Jordan and Ben, have been in negotiations and have negotiated beyond what the original extent that they were prepared to pay by a long shot. We're seeking to provide effectively a play space that is able to be extended in the future, and seeing this area as being expandable, and to fit a broader context of this precinct as it develops, because of the large amount of area and space that's required because of the floodplain through there. So it does provide those opportunities. The simple answer, I suppose, Madam Mayor, is that effectively it's negotiation with the developer. They're prepared to provide a nature play space per se, but not, and there are some elements of active place in there. So there are some, there's just not your traditional playground. There are some elements in there that are traditional, but not in the full sense, like a Fifth Street playground. But there are some normal play equipment mixed in with some nature play, and it is able to be expanded into the future. That's something that we were really conscious of embedding within the design as well.
First question.
So just again, play equipment, there's a few logs, that's it. Sorry, but you know, there is an established community here that is a bit further up, but you know, it won't take long for this to be developed. It'll be a popular area. I just think, why is it the council pays for pretty much all the play equipment? We've got a very basic play space that won't address the open space needs of this community, recreational needs of young people. I just find it very puzzling that not one piece of play equipment. It just seems the developer's been let off scot-free, frankly.
Mr. Bellina.
Just take some direction in regards to the actual landscape design itself, in terms of the elements of play that are incorporated into that. Jordan, are you able to talk to that at the lectern?
Good evening.
Yes,
Through the chair. So there's been a variety of sort of, as Sam touched on, nature play elements, including boulders, timber steppers, timber balancing logs within the playground here, as well as this sort of path descending with, again, sort of these concrete sort of seating areas, as well as boulders mixed through the DDA path as well down.
Subsequent question, Mayor. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Goldstone and Councillor Tosh. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Councillor Hughes, I'll catch you in a second.
I actually have the same question as the mayor just raised. The other thing we need to keep in mind that this house is going up here already. People that are moving into young families. So, you know, most of those houses will have kids. So, yeah, I agree. I was a bit the same. I get the gist of the report. I can understand the direction it's going, but it's just a bit disappointing that there's not a more or a better playground.
Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, I'm actually, yeah, agree with Councillor Goldstein and the Mayor about play space, but I'm actually happy to move the noting motion. That's acceptable. And do note the local Indigenous species that are being planted in that area, which is really good. The species list is fantastic. And it's really good to see that corner. And some of the nature play equipment stuff is good, but it just probably a little bit more be good. But I do know it's just a noting report. And yeah, happy to move it.
Have a second for that? No seconder. Lapses for one of a seconder. Councillor Cost, you had something to say?
Yeah, got a couple of questions around the costs, the maintenance of it. Given that the maintenance sort of equates to almost half the rate revenue, at what point do we take over the maintenance when you consider that rate revenue comes in when the 91 blocks are sold? So when do we take over the maintenance?
Mr. Bellina.
Through the chair. So our maintenance arrangements would, under normal circumstances, kick in if it's bonded. Like under normal circumstances, we'd bond this with the developer if they're seeking to effectively sell the allotments prior to completing the reserve, and that would be 12 months after it's constructed. So it just depends on the timing of that construction per se. They could bond this well into the future and then build it, in 2 or 3 years' time per se. So we don't have powers to compel them to build per se on the basis they're actually bonding with us. So, but effectively 12 months after it's built, they maintain it for the first 12 months.
Subsequent question.
Second question, I suppose, is through your chair to Mr. Forward. Given the maintenance is about 50%, and then you also looked at the depreciation of the roads, etc., how much is left over for all the other services that those residents would access?
Through the chair, as I've mentioned in the report, I think the $125,000 rate revenue referenced, that will only come to fruition on full development of the development. So that will only be realised over time. So up until then, there will be obviously the costs incurred with the development. So it's only at the completion of the development that there would be that full rate revenue kicking in. So up until then, there would be, on an annual basis, differing levels between the recurrent costs being incurred with maintenance of the development compared to the rate revenue. So what I was trying to demonstrate was the full rate revenue will only be realised on completion of the residential development.
Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, 2 questions. I guess they would go to Mr. Bellina, I'm guessing. Has this open space design been developed in accord with the town of Gawler's open space guidelines? And we developed those guidelines to solve this problem that kept on going about what if the area is, is too much this way and it's going to cost us. So the idea was that we did the guidelines and the developers worked with staff to come up with something that everyone was happy with. So that's my question. Is this design compatible with and were the guidelines used?
Certainly, through the chair. Yes, I think the short answer is yes, Councillor Toy. We've developed the guidelines that's informing in terms of the base mineral requirements for the reserve. The outcomes are being informed by the guidelines.
Have a subsequent question.
It's probably the obvious question. Is the developer happy with the design that you've collaborated on?
Through the chair, I suppose happy insofar as that's what they've been prepared to submit. I will say what we have here is far in excess, significantly in excess of what was first tabled with staff. Going back 4 years ago, there was very little, we were struggling to negotiate a path around the outside. So what we have here is effectively, I think what they've identified about $400,000 upgrade. I think that's their staff nodding, versus what was broadly half that going back, back 4 or 5 years ago when we started this process. So we've managed to extend the outcomes to the extent which we believe there's a strong alignment with the intent of the guidelines. I think that's been in our favour. That's helped support the outcomes that we've got in this location. I take on board the members, some of the members' comments in regards to the more structured play elements, but effectively this is where we've landed. Doesn't stop those elements going in the future. And we've got other developer contributions for open space that we can extract and allocate, and not necessarily provide open space in future developments, but seek to embed and improve what we have here.
Pardon me, what did you say?
I prepared then to second the motion and to talk to the motion.
No, that's the one that was moved by Councillor Hughes.
Didn't Councillor Hughes move that we adopted?
It lapsed because of one of the seconder.
Oh, hang on. If you wind back the video, you said, I think it's going to lapse. And then I put my hand up for a question. Councillor Koch put up the question. We asked some questions. And I needed the answer to those questions to know if I wanted to second it. I'm prepared to second it.
Well, I actually said it's lapsed because I couldn't see anybody put the hand up. So that might be one.
You appear to be moving in that direction, but I don't believe you'd actually called it. If we can find the video back that up.
I'll just get some direction, but I think it's actually mute to me. But
I recall quite clearly that you did declare that the motion was lapsed. So we don't have a motion, but the council, my understanding is the council can present, can move, can seek to effectively move the same motion.
So you can move the same motion.
Okay, I think if you do go back and have a look at it, and I always do, I love the videos. I think we have to thank Councillor Hughes for initially indicating that we should have these videos, but I love them. And I think if you do look back, you'll find you didn't quite get there. But anyway, we've solved the problem. I'm prepared to move this motion. Can I now speak to it? Thank you. The thing that convinced me to move this, and I've read the thing, and I do recognise that no design is going to be 100% what everybody wants. And I take on board some of the thoughts that were shared about place space, etc. But I take on notice that these things can change over time. But to me, the most important thing was the answers to those two questions that I asked. In this chamber, we went through an incredible amount of angst before the new membership came on board, when it was realised that we had been approving designs which were going to present a significant ongoing cost to maintain. Now, we went through a discussion where we said, well, that's it, we're going to rip them out. And I was one of the people who led the charge, and I was asked to support the people at Springwood, and we got to an agreement that, you know what, if we made a mistake, we cannot now punish the people who bought into that area because of the amenity that was developed. So we saved the existing parks. What we then agreed to do was we needed a better guideline. I think Mr. Delina picked up on this when he came in, that we didn't have such a guideline to really guide us. I think he led the charge that we needed to do that. And we worked over a long time to develop a set of guidelines that in the end, democracy ruled, and we said, this gives certainty to both staff and to developers. And it's a bit like the staff that work for Ryan. If someone puts in a development application, if it follows the rules that we've set up, we never hear about it. It follows that pathway. This is the same. We have the plan, a developer works with the staff, and if it's fitting within the plan, end of story. So what we have here is a plan that is the result of input from both the developer and staff. And as Mr. Delina said, it's actually better than what the residents might have got if the original plan a few years ago was left as it was. So I think that's a big tick for our staff, that they said, we think we can do better. They still work within the guidelines that we have set. That's our policy. And we've come to this point. So to me, you can understand why developers and the community get cross at us when we keep changing the rules. If we now say, this group, that we're not happy with it and reject it, then that's a slap in the face to the developers who in good faith work with the staff. It's a slap in the face to our staff. And we can give a bit of feedback, a bit of tweaking maybe, but the bones of it are substantial and they're fair and they're compliant. I think we have an obligation to support it, and I hope you will.
We have a second to that motion. Councillor Gawler, you wish to speak? Any further discussion? You wish to speak again, Councillor Tooley? Close the debate? No. No. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? It's carried. Now up to 7.3. We have a officer's recommendation there, moved by Councillor Hughes, seconded by Councillor Goldstone. You wish to speak, Councillor Hughes? No?
Yeah, just briefly, thank the officer for the report. I think it's really important, especially this year, but it always is. So it's good, and it's vital work that council does. It's good.
Councillor Goldstone, you wish to say anything? Any other discussion? Councillor Hughes, Councillor Tooley.
Please be careful. I can't support this motion. Page 39 of 46, this statement is in there. Council is required to develop its own public health plan to protect, improve and promote community health and wellbeing. I look at the three recommendations. The report identifies three emerging public health issues and trends on page 87 of 135. And they are this: COVID-19, mental health and suicide prevention, and then COVID-19 and economic recovery. I was flabbergasted that I saw no mention of climate change. When you read the report from the three councils, or the four councils, the only council that mentioned climate change was in the Gawler report that said we were the first council to declare a climate emergency. That's it. And then you read the report and it's saying that our public health plan is predicated on keeping our community safe based on it's around COVID economic, mental health and suicide prevention. Now, that on their own, they're not a problem. But a plan that does not recognise climate change is a fool's plan. If you watched the news last night on the ABC, they gave the health impacts of the fires that we all witnessed in 2019 and 20. And from that burst of fires, there were 3,200 hospital admissions due just to smoke inhalation and 420 deaths. South Australia has the highest rate of heat stress death in the nation and increasing because of climate change. Gawler is identified, and we've read this in the media recently, as having a significantly high number of heat islands and is losing tree coverage. The health impacts of climate change are in our face every single day. Our own Climate Emergency Action Plan Working Group, part of their mandate is to look at keeping the community safe as a consequence of the changing climate, which means practical things like offering shelter, water, cover in the heat and in the cold. The Australian Medical Association and Doctors for the Environment have declared that climate change is the greatest threat to human health. And yet, we have a regional public health plan that doesn't even prioritise the impacts of climate change. I've got no more words. That is just, I know you'll be shocked with that, Paul, but that is just mind-boggling. I hope we vote this down and say to the officers, bring us back a report that actually will focus on keeping our community safe. But I can tell you, this summer, and we've already had 40-degree days in spring, 3 of them in a row, we will continue to see the impacts, the health impacts of climate change, not just smoke inhalation from bushfires, but the impacts of heat and the impacts of plagues. And COVID is undeniably related to our impact on the environment. If you saw Attenborough the other night, this is coming in more and more waves until we get a hold on climate change. You cannot have a health plan without facing
30 seconds.
Climate change. I'm done.
Any other discussion? Wish to close the debate, Councillor Hughes. Put that motion. All those in favour? Against? It's carried. Division, please stand. Those who voted for it. Nobody on so I'll go around to the left. It's Councillor Kosh, Councillor Goldstone, Councillor Batalonga, Councillor Hughes, Councillor, sorry, giving me a sample, Councillor Fraser and Mayor Redmond and myself. Against is Councillor Tooley. Thank you. Next one is appointment of a deputy chairperson. Who would like to be deputy chairperson? Will you nominate? Oh, that's right. Councillor Hughes. No, I'm doing it. This is the deputy. This is my deputy. There's no other nominations. Well, Councillor Hughes, all those in favour? Against, carried. No items listed for discussion. No items discussion at future meetings. Questions without notice. Sorry, Deputy Mayor Sample.
Thank you, Chairman Paul. Just a couple of things. The other day, Councillor Fraser mentioned about the factor of a situation which is quite uncanny because there was an accident 2 days later, and that is to do with the traffic flow that comes over the Million Bridge. And if you get into the left lane, if you're in the right lane, sorry, if you're coming from the south, the road on your left stops at the corner. So in other words, because I asked the policeman, you certainly know this, it means that the person that's in the right lane can actually come around. The line needs to come all the way around to leave that person on the inside to the road. The other day, a car on the outside took off and came around, went straight through the side of a car. Does everybody understand what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
In other words, the white line stops at where you pull your car up, if you know what I mean, on the bridge. That's number one question. I'll go to Mr. Molina if I can. And the other one is, again, Councillor Fraser raised the issue, and I've certainly raised it a few times, at Sunnydale Drive, where you turn off the road at the S bend there to come up Sunnydale. People are cutting the corner. The lady at the restaurant there said, you know, like she hears bangs all the time and so forth. And I must admit, I sat out there the other day and had a cup of coffee and a hot dog, you know, and all that. And I couldn't believe that when people come around that corner and it just needs to cement around strip. So I'm just wondering if we can ask the question again.
Take those questions on notice, Mr. Lilly.
If you're going out of Gawler and instead of going over the railway line at the S bend, you turn to the right and go up Sunnydale. What happens is, I bet you do it too, you cut the corner around. It's a blind corner on the corner. It needs a cement safety curb in the middle of the road. Mr. Lima said he was going to look into it.
Can I write the question?
So there's two questions. In regards to the bridge, I'll come back to the members with some explanation as to the design and the rationale behind the current line marking. Just double check that it may. But the yeah, as Councillor Fraser said, that line actually relates to traffic that's exiting Julian Terrace heading south onto Mainnorth Road. But I do understand what Deputy Mayor Sample and Councillor Fraser have said in this regard. But we'll just review that and come back to members. In respect to the other matter, there is a motion that was accepted by the council, and there's a roads safety review currently being undertaken, which will seek to recommend some treatments there. And we do have existing budget through a road safety improvements allocation that's made generally every year by the council, that we can seek to implement these, anything that's identified, likely to be some, improved separation at that intersection. I know that study is currently being undertaken at the moment.
Thanks, Mr. Luna. Any other questions without notice? We now move on to motions without notice. We have one from Councillor Fraser. Oh, sorry, there's a typo. There's a mistake, isn't it? That's right now. Yeah. You wish to speak to that, Councillor Fraser?
Well, I did speak to it before and just said that, all these councils, as the Mayor said, there's 10 councils, and surely if we can lobby as a group, we might be able to do something about it, because it does really affect industry. The Barossa, the Adelaide Hills, and our own council, we have people who are making a living out of GM-free products, and it won't take long for that to disappear unless we can get this through.
Have a second for that motion. Mayor, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Fraser, for putting this up. Yeah, I think this is a good way forward. There are, including us with 10 councils, all peri-urban, making an entire precinct. There is a reasonable argument. At this stage, the Minister's not listening to the argument. I think that we can get better at if we work together. And Onkaparinga are very determined. As I said before, I've had discussions with Mayor Thompson from Onkaparinga Council, the largest council in the state. I have had brief discussions with Mayor Lange, who's very concerned about this. And, coupled with the recent decision around Chinese tariffs, it's a real hit to the economic prosperity of this region, because Gawler benefits greatly from the economics that come out of the Barossa region through workers, through businesses themselves, and just being in the region. And as I said before, Peter Hunt from Berry Barmera very much supportive of his businesses that are going to be hit as a result of this, I think, unfortunate decision. So I think we can do some lobbying, and yeah, let's hope this gets supported and we can go forward.
Further discussion, Councillor Tooley.
I will definitely support this motion, but I've spent 40 years in education. I don't claim, as some do, to have 40 years in 20 different professions, but in education, you never stifle a good idea. The kid comes to you with an idea, you actually encourage creativity. You never crush it, even though a little bit of you might think it might not go anywhere. And to say that it would be lost, and I saw a bit of sniggering to my side over here when I mentioned the old day, and to say, in a condescending way that it just won't get there, I think is to remove one possibility that could lend weight. And as our exalted worship would know, the way it works with the OGM is that you put in a motion on notice, and it goes to the GAROC. The GAROC is the metro regional areas. The SAROC, which represents more of the country areas where the grain growing is, where there may be a strong view from the likes of the previous president of the LGA in the Eyre Peninsula, who might say, no, we want GM, but it won't go to the SAROC, it will go to the GAROC. And we're told that the GAROC is a powerful group in its own right. So even if the LGA didn't pursue it, the GAROC can pursue it, because it is, after all, invested in a representative of the urban councils. So to say that we won't put this forward is to remove a platform that could lend weight to Councillor Fraser's push. Because if the GAROC or if the LGA were to add weight to this, they are a peak body. They have a strong voice into the ear of the relevant minister. Now, I hope this works, but I don't think this alone will sway the minister, because he knows those 10 are already angry that he rejected them. But if you did this in partnership with the LGA, and if GAROC or the LGA were to endorse such a motion, and you never know, this is the thing, never defeat yourself, you never know, you might think you won't get across. I got within one vote for the climate emergency declaration, one vote. If we called a division on the day, I reckon we would have got there. And yet some said that'll never happen. We'll get it across at the OGM. I'm convinced of that. But let's have two motions on the floor of the OGM. If we put it in and the GAROC rejects it, then we've tried. Can't go any further. But if GAROC embraces it and says, and most of those 10 councils are represented by GAROC, then it goes to the floor and it gets publicity. And then you take your chances. Never, ever defeat yourself without having tried. You must always try. And so, yes, I'll vote for this, but I hope when it comes to motions for the OGM that we might be bold enough to put one in to this effect to the LGM.
Any other further discussion? Wish to close the debate. Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. May I declare the meeting closed.